All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Transfer Portal CFB podcast. We're continuing our previews, our conference previews, and today we are tackling the American Athletic Conference, the AAC. A lot of changes that have been happening with the AAC the last couple of years. So we're here to break it all down. I have our much anticipated return, or one of our OGs, Andrew. Took a little hiatus, but he's back and better. So, Andrew, how are you, sir?
I'm good. I'm back. I feel like 2015 Braxton Miller when he was out of that 2014 Ohio State team came back against Virginia Tech in 2015 and literally did the spin move on the entire Virginia Tech secondary. I mean, I've been out for a few months, but you guys have still done a fantastic job and uh excited to be back. Things called life happen. Happy back. It's funny. Dylan asked me to do this preview like a couple weeks ago, and I was kind of like, dude, my school left the AAC this summer. Do you really think I care about this conference? But honestly, it's very Texas heavy. I love talking Texas football. You know, there's a new big Texas team that's in the AAC this year that I know you and I have a lot to discuss about.
Oh yeah,
Um, there's a big influence on this conference in the states. So I'm still gonna watch the AAC. It's still a good conference. It's a growing conference. I've kind of always viewed it as uh the the Squidward meme looking out the window, looking at the looking at the Power Five, and it's the best G5 conference. It's always the team that has the New Year's Six you know
participate.
bid from the G5. Luckily, my school, Houston, may not be in this conference anymore, but they did leave behind some good programs, and there's some really good programs coming in. I think there's a lot of animosity towards how UCF, Cincinnati, and Houston left the AAC, going to the Big 12. I'm really excited to watch this conference because there are some of these programs that you may think to yourself like they may not be on the same level as those three programs, but they're still good enough to be a household name to be in a bowl game that you would want to pay attention to. I think a team like UTSA, this benefits them greatly because this is a program that's obviously only been around for 12 years.
Yeah,
Um, there's more hype around this team over the last 2 years than it has. You know, this is the best thing that happened in San Antonio since the Spurs in the mid 2000s. That's great for them. It allows Rice even. This is actually a big move for Rice, and I think they get under talked about a lot. My biggest thing about Rice is that I thought that they had terrible facilities. I didn't think that they had good enough facilities to move into a conference like the AAC. But I know that there's been a lot of work done in Rice University to upgrade their football programs and to update the football facilities a little bit. Still, get a new stadium. Okay, if you got to go to Energy for a year or two, do that. Don't go to Houston. Please don't. Don't go to TDC. We don't want you there. Okay, it's all. No, I'm just kidding. Cut that out. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, like Rice is a program that I think last year you saw it was a very serious program where they were starting to make strides. They were starting to win some games. They were fighting for bowl eligibility in the end, and that's just something that you did not see from Rice for the last almost 10 years. They're in a great football city here in Houston. They have the academics. It's a very good academic city. If you get athletes that may not be, first round picks like you would find out like Texas or a Texas A&M, Rice still they have key components to be a successful program now in the AEC. It may take a couple years, but I think they've definitely made some strides. I really am excited for, you know, North Texas. This is a big move for them too. I think they're the forgotten team of the bunch. North Texas is another program where they play competitively against the likes of UTSA and the Conference USA. They come into AC. It may take a couple years for them to get good, but overall, I'm really excited for the AC and what the future holds for them.
yeah. No, you mentioned it. With Rice and North Texas, and these programs that are coming into the AAC. There's a lot of shift that has happened in the AAC, and we'll definitely talk about that here in a sec. But before we begin, we have to pay our bills, as they say. We are a lot of good things are happening with the transfer portal CFP over the last few months, right up until the start of the season. We've been able to partner up with amazing partners, all of the and that allowed us and helped us along the way to create our Transfer Portal CFB magazine that's out now. It's a fully digital magazine, $9.99. And it's a full breakdown of every single team. I mean, our team did an amazing job covering and breaking down every single team, every Power Five team, every Group of Five team, even some FCS teams. It's an amazing product. I know I'm a little biased. It's an amazing product, and we've gotten reviews are great, and I feel everybody needs to go out there and get their hands on or their virtual hands on a copy of the Transfer Portal CFB magazine. And along with that, our great partners with MyBookie. They provided all of our betting lines for the magazine, and they've decided to take a chance on us as we continue to grow. So shout out to MyBookie. Shout out to Home Field Apparel, who is amazing product. Their t-shirts and their gear for every college football team out there is great. So shout out to them for helping us, and use the word portal to receive 15% off your first order. That's portal, PORTAL, to receive 15% off your first order with Home Field Apparel. To shout out to them, shout out to all of our great sponsors that are allowing us to do this. So let's break in. Let's begin to break down. The AAC, like you mentioned, it's coming off they're usually right in the mix of things with the Group of Five, and getting that Group of Five bid in the New York Six Bowls. I mean, we've seen Cincinnati make the playoff. They were on top there. UCF was on top there for a while, but they're not here anymore. And last year it was out of nowhere. Tulane shows up out of nowhere and wins the American, and actually ends up upsetting Heisman Trophy winner Caleb Williams and USC in the Cotton Bowl. In a great game, great come from behind victory for Tulane, an amazing moment for that program. Who's they've had their ups and downs over the last couple years, especially more in the last decade. They've had their issues, but they're back, and they've answered the call last year, and it was basically a run down the line with Cincinnati, UCF, and Tulane last year. And then once the dust settled and we're gearing up for this 2023 season, Tulane is the only team standing out of that. With we alluded to it earlier, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF, three programs who have had success in the American, have now graduated per se, have shifted they've upgraded their conference to the Big 12, who has seen their own turnover here in the next couple of years. So they're gone. And when you lose something, you have to replace it. And they replace it with some very interesting teams. And you mentioned it, Rice, who has struggled a lot the last few years. What is that going to do? Bringing that extra revenue, bringing that, you be able to upgrade the facilities like you mentioned, and see how that program can get turned around. But along them with FAU, Charlotte, UAB, from the Conference USA, and probably the biggest name, one of the biggest names in college football the last couple of years is UTSA. I mean, what a big grab for the American to bring in a program that is one of the winningest programs over the last few years. They've won 10 games in both years back to back. They won the Conference USA championship. They went undefeated in conference the last two seasons under Jeff Traylor. And then they come into the American Conference almost automatically ready to compete for the conference championship. So it's a big deal to lose for the American, to lose these heavy hitters in Houston and in Cincinnati and UCF, but you replace that with a team like UTSA. And what do you think that's going to do to the conference itself?
Well, I mean, you're saying all these great things about UTSA, but the one thing that they need to do that I would like to see until I'm fully convinced is I would like to see them win a bowl game.
Yeah.
That was probably a little bit of a low blow that I just gave right there.
That's a fair assessment, though.
I mean, listen, it really is. I mean, I saw a lot of people start to talk a little bit of smack to Jeff Traylor, like after their last bowl loss, and I was like, Listen, obviously it hurts because they've had a lot of talent in especially in the wide receiver room. I mean, they've had one of the best defenses in the Conference USA over the last 2 years. But I'm sorry, what was the question again? I wasn't paying attention. I was paying attention, but now I feel bad.
No, no, it's just like what how does it feel to like what do you think the impact of the American bringing in a team like UTSA
I mean,
to
I view it somewhat similarly to how when we first heard the news about the Big 12 and Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC. Like, no one's going to question the quality that the SEC is better than the Big 12. We're not going to question the quality of the Big 12 being better pool than the AEC. But at the end of the day, the way that you reload is not it may not be the same talent, it may not be the same power, but it's still kind of juicy, you know what I mean? Like, and it kind of weird. It's kind of weird of saying that. There's a lot of upside to come up out of this. There's still programs out there that have kind of like, I don't want to say been in the mud, but you know what? They've kind of been rising up. They've been rising up over the last couple of years. UTSA has been that. Houston, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati. Cincinnati made 2 New Year's Six bowl games in a row. One of them being the playoff. Yeah, they went 0-2, but one of them you're going up against Nick Saban and Alabama. That you're just not going to win out of that. That's just tough as a G5 school. The next you held Georgia to the absolute last couple minutes of that Peach Bowl.
yeah.
And no one should ever question Luke Fickell and the talent of that Cincinnati team and the fight that he gave those guys. Houston made a Peach Bowl back in the 2015 season. They beat Oklahoma at home in 2016. They beat Lamar Jackson that year. I mean, it wasn't New Year's Six quality, but you still saw a lot of good play from what those guys did. UCF, we remember Blake Bortles being at a New Year's Six Bowl in 2014, 2013, one of those 2 seasons. Actually, now that I think about it, I think it was in 2013 because in 2014, that was when Bortles got drafted before Johnny Manziel. That's how I remember that. Weird things. But I think kind of like the overall reaction is kind of like I've already kind of like said it is there's room to grow for a lot of these programs coming in. UTSA, I think you're finally giving them all the resources that they need. I think if you were a school getting recruited by the Conference USA in the past, you were kind of like, I mean, listen, I'm not going to get those LSU, Alabama, Ohio State offers, but you're still getting me to a good school. You're still getting me to San Antonio is a very cultural city. That's kind of the way that I would identify San Antonio. I mean, I think I know that very well. Houston, with NIL, there's loads of opportunity here in Houston if you decide to get recruited by Rice. Denton, Texas, yes, it may be the armpit of the DFW area, but at the end of the day, you're still in the DFW area. Got to consider that. FAU, Boca Raton, I don't know where exactly in Florida that is, but FAU is another program that's kind of been up the last couple seasons. I mean, when Willie Taggart was there, I mean, was he shit with FAU or was he good? I think he was shit.
No, he's not there anymore. They have Tom Herman now.
I know they got Tom Herman, but I'm saying while he was there, I think he was kind of forced out. And UAB has been another team that they've kind of been in the fighting for the Conference USA. So you're adding a ton of programs here that they're not going to bring in the revenue right away, but you're giving them all the tools. You're giving them the recruiting resources. They're in good cities, especially with NIL these days. There's loads of businesses to work with. I still think it's still very good. The AAC, yeah, you lost UCF, you lost Houston, and you've lost Cincinnati. Those hurt. They suck. Okay, we got to go ahead and that's just the fact. But at the end of the day, with the way that college football is moving with realignment, and yeah, we may get to a point of 2 super conferences. This is just nature. You just got to just play along with the game that's being said. I mean, AC, you're not bigger than the SEC. You're not bigger than Big Ten. Instead of packing it up with what it looks like is happening with the Pac-12, kind of like take advantage of it. Take some outsiders that have been giving themselves a fighting chance over the last couple of seasons and try to run with it. That's how these programs like Cincinnati got to where they are. This is how Houston got to where they were. Houston was never on the same spectrum as Texas or Texas A&M. They're still not. I'm not saying that they are, Houston did get a better record than A&M last season. I will say that, but there's still a lot to cherish, and there's still a lot to really think positively with these programs coming in.
Yeah, no, yeah, you said it. It's I think they did a great job of reloading and retooling the conference to kind of keep themselves in that kind of that one tier. And with the Pac-12, pretty much dead at this point, they could develop to become this fifth Power Five conference with the Pac-12 no longer around. But definitely a lot of realignment, a lot of things, moving parts over the next few seasons that we have to pay attention to. So with that said, so let's break it down. Let's kind of go through these and see what we see. How do we see the conference shaping up? I'll start here, and I don't know if you will agree with me on this or not, but Charlotte, I have them Charlotte in last place. So they're not good. I'll keep it short and sweet. They're not good. They won 3 games last year. They do have a new coach, Biff Poggi. But he's a high school coach. He wasn't, he wasn't really. He doesn't come from another program. He comes from high school. Um, he had some developmental kind of roles with Michigan as well. So but he has no real, college head coaching experience. Um, they lost a lot. They're just not going to be very good. I think the bright spot for them is edge rusher Yabi Oki, who comes from Michigan. He's going to be very good, I think, and might be a bright spot for them this year. But other than that, I mean, there's really not much to be excited for in Charlotte. Sorry to Charlotte fans listening to this, but every program goes through it. You have to develop, you have to rebuild, and they're kind of gonna. I think they're going to be the struggling team, in the American this year. What do you have as your last place team?
My last place is USF. I almost said UCF. No, that'd be I would agree that UCF would have 0 wins in the AAC this year because they are not in the AAC. But USF, last place for me, that they were a 1-win team last year, and that 1 win, if you asked any casual to ask them who did they beat, it was Howard. Okay, I mean, do you even know where Howard University is?
I feel like it's in the South somewhere. I would think it's in the South somewhere.
I call it Cam Newton's little brother university for that one time that he led that comeback against UNLV. That's all I know Howard for. But they beat Howard last year in their second game of the season, and they've lost 10 straight after that. It's also another first-year head coach in Alex Bolsh, and as of now, I don't think they have an offensive coordinator as it sits. I just don't trust this team right now. There's just I kind of just look at everything. I look at the transfers coming in. It's a lot of inexperience. It's a lot of the one AAC player that they had, all AAC player that they had from last season, second teamer, Ryan Battle, went to Auburn. I mean, come on, man. Like when your only good has already left you, how can I trust this team to win against any of these teams that they have on their schedule? You got to play against Alabama. You got to play Alabama week 3. Who put this schedule together for them? I mean, Christ above, you got Nick Saban who's looking for revenge on the entire SEC, and he's got to go up against USF.
Yeah,
I'm literally looking at the schedule. You still got to go to at UTSA in week 11. You got to go to UConn in week 8. UConn, we joked them for being a non-existent football program for a while, but you know what? They made strides last season. As of now, there's still I just can't trust this team to go very far. How can you rely on any team to go from 1 win the last season against an FCS team to being anything but bottom of the barrel of the AAC? I just don't see it in my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's why I have USF 13th in my rankings. Yeah, like you said, Alex Golish, he was with John Heupel last year in Tennessee with that high powered offense, but there's really not much else to really add to that you mentioned. Maybe their offense could be a little bit more, more of a spark compared to Charlotte, which is what kind of puts them a little bit over the edge on Charlotte. But Yeah, I mean, just for the same reasons that you said. Yeah, they're number 13 for me. Who's your 13?
My third team. So obviously, I said that Charlotte is my second to last. I just said Temple. Temple, they're they're a work in progress, just to kind of be nice. I mean, a big loss that they had was Darian Varner. He was a first team All AAC player for Temple last year. He decides to go to Wisconsin. Shout out Wisconsin, Luke Fickle AAC poll right there. But in all seriousness, Temple is just another one of those programs that's still trying to find his feet. We're building up from a 3-9 team last season. Um, I just try to look at everything up to bottom, and I just don't see too much from where I see progress. I mean, like Jordan McGee's a really good linebacker for them. When you lose a player like Varner, you essentially have to rebuild that entire defensive line. He made that much of an impact for them last season. I don't have too much to say about Temple other than the fact of that that you still got Kurt Warner's son over there, EJ Warner. Shout out to him. Um, it's a rebuilding program. It's not one that I'm taking too serious right now. If they get up to like a 6-6 and be improved from a 3-9, I think that's very successful for them.
Yeah, interesting. I have Temple up at number 8, but I'll talk about that here in a sec. For my number 12 team, I have Rice. I know that last year was Rice's first kind of real shot at a postseason, at a bowl, in a few years, in almost a decade. I think 2014 was the last time they were kind of in the mix for a bowl game. I mean, but they're 16-39 since 2018. You bring in JT Daniels, which a lot of people have talked about. Him being there, that he's going to Rice more for academics. Less than for football. He's kind of accepted that fact. After US his fourth transfer or third transfer, he went from USC to Georgia to West Virginia, and now now he's at Rice. So Luke McCaffrey is back as well. So it's going to be interesting. They have a good little squad. I think a couple of key players for the Rice does, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. At least not yet. I don't think this is a year that with the a lot the changes that have come to the American. I don't think that Rice is going to really move the needle that much.
I will say this: the one thing that's brutal for Rice is they lost Bradley Rosner to NC
Yeah.
State. That was a big loss for them. He was their number one receiver last year, and he was actually really hot in the month of October. I actually genuinely do feel bad for Rice because this kind of came out of nowhere. This only happened like last month, and he goes to NC State. Um, I I had Rice a little bit higher, but I still kind of see where you're coming with. I do have a little bit higher point. I do have a little higher hopes for Rice. The issue with them is that they started off so well last season. I mean, they started off the season 5-4, I think it was, and then they just absolutely imploded the last couple games. I mean, sorry, yeah, they lost their last 4 games, including their bowl game against Southern Miss. My current fourth from bottom. I'm sorry, did I say?
Yeah,
Yeah, I said Temple. Yeah. So my 11th team is UAB. You and I kind of spoke a little bit about it, a little bit off the air before we jumped on, and you kind of like persuaded me a little bit. I didn't entirely know what was going on with UAB. Like, why did they finish so low? Like, I mean, this was a team that was just recently in a Conference USA championship game against UTSA. And then you kind of said, like, okay, well, it's a first year head coach, Trent Dilfer, him being the first year head coach at UAB. I mean, listen, if his analysis in the film room is anything like how it was on ESPN, prayers up for UAB because this is going to go down badly. I mean, this is the guy that literally had the audacity to go on television and tell millions of Americans that you cannot lose games in the NFL and still win. Okay. I mean, Christ above, I could put up better arguments during an argument with my fiance.
There's no
Okay.
deal for
I mean,
dimes at UAB this year.
yes. I mean, you know, I think there's UAB is just a really, really young team based on what you told me. You told me that they're switching out like 4 offensive line into their squad this year.
Yeah.
That's just absolute recipe for disaster. I feel like every successful offensive line is based on familiarity and chemistry. Um, whenever you talk about four new offensive linemen, you're talking about four players that are likely learning a new playbook. Okay, and someone that was an offensive lineman in high school, and I know we're talking college, not high school, but every offensive scheme has a different blocking pattern, whether if it's zone, whether if it's pulling, whether if it's whether if they have to block different gaps, spreads, or spread offenses have different blocking schemes than what a pro style offense would have. Typically, in a pro style offense, you kind of just block whoever is in front of you. With spreading, there's a lot more pulling. This is why you see a lot of players who played for Oregon, especially during the Chip Kelly era. Some of these offensive linemen had they had 40 times that were in with like tight ends. And based on that inexperience on UAB's offensive line, I just cannot see that chemistry boding well for them for the rest of the season.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree with that. I have them at number 11 as well. I mean, it's interesting, Trendle, for what he's going to do with the program. It's year one. They're losing a lot of a lot of talent. You just mentioned, they're losing their quarterback,
DeWayne McBride.
DeWayne McBride. Four offensive linemen. So I mean, Jacob Zeno and there's a couple of transfers that have come in to try to stabilize it. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be very 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 successful, at least not in year one. So I have them at number 11 as well. For number 10, kind of moving along here. Number 10, I have Tulsa. Kevin Wilson, he worked at Ohio State, he worked at Oklahoma, so he's had a lot of success offensively. So we'll have to see how that translates to Tulsa. Braylon Braxton comes back as at quarterback, and he played in flashes a rising star for them. I don't think it's going to move the needle much, so that's why I have Tulsa at 10. But they definitely have some promise for sure.
Okay, so what I will say is, in regards to Tulsa, I think that there's a guy out there that I think you should maybe keep a little bit of an eye on, and a guy who I think could do well for Tulsa this year. I'm going to say Keith Wheeler the second. I've actually seen this guy play in high school when he was at Atascocita here in Texas. He redshirted last year. He saw some game time against Houston. He was among the top recruits of Tulsa's in the 2022 recruiting cycle. Three-star guy. He was recruited by Houston as well. He was recruited by a couple of AAC schools. I think from what I've seen, he's actually going to be given the full go for 2023. I think he's a guy that can break out a little bit for that Golden Hurricanes team. So kind of like just to speed it up a little bit. I got Navy at my number 10 spot. Navy's been a mess the last couple seasons. I mean, I can't remember. I whatever happened to the Keenan Reynolds days? I mean, where is Keenan Reynolds? I mean, is he an admiral? Navy's kind of been a little bit all over the block right now. I know that there's been a lot of changes. Just for the sake of speaking it up, like, go ahead and just tell me like who your number 9 team is, because I think that was also Navy.
Yeah, it is. I have Navy at number 9. It's a new era. Brian Newberry's promoted to head coach. After the long time coach. I'm going to watch this. Ken Niumatalolo is
I'm
gone.
sorry if I have just pissed off a ton of Hawaiians right now. I feel like I just did.
Yeah, so he's gone after a while. I mean, he was there for a long time, so it's going to be interesting how that changes. And lucky for them, they don't have to play Tulane or UTSA this season. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. So that's why they're my number 9 team. Moving up to number 8, you talked about it, Temple. I mean, kind of the same reason what you said. They only won 3 games last year in Stan Drayton's debut, but there was lots of progress towards the end of the year. They got a lot better. EJ Warner is back. He was his first year at quarterback last year, so he's back and he's ready to kind of continue on that rise. And I think that they're loaded. They have a loaded receiving core. Ahmad Anderson and he's back. David Martin Robinson and Jordan Smith at tight end. They're back to kind of bolster that offense. But their defense is going to struggle. They struggled defensively last year, so we'll definitely see. We'll have to see what happens there. So who's your number 8?
My number 8 was Rice. TJ McMahon, no longer being the quarterback there. He was a good player, but he decided to go over to Marshall. We kind of spoke a little bit about JT Daniels. This guy is going to be in his fourth school in 5 years. Is it 5 or 6 years?
Yeah, 5 and 6. Yeah, he spent 2 years at USC.
USC, Georgia, West Virginia, and now here we are, Rice.
Yeah, he was at 2 years at Georgia, two years at USC. So this is his sixth year. Yeah.
This man has had more schools than I've had hot showers in this week. Okay, not literally. You guys don't need to know that personal info. But in all seriousness, though, what the hell does this guy? Does this guy just live in a suitcase? You go from Los Angeles, you go to Athens, you go to Morgantown, then you come to Houston. Okay, like where does this guy find stability? I know you said he's there for the educational reasons. I think he's trying to. I think I read something that he's trying to get his degree in law or something like that. I mean, Rice is a great law school, but besides that, there's not too much to say about Rice other than the fact that Bradley Rosner literally just left him in the dust to go to NC State. That's bad. Luke McCaffrey is a good wide receiver. I can't wait to draft his brother in fantasy this year. That's about as much as I know about Luke himself. He was about a 700-yard receiver from last year. I think he can build on that a little bit, see if he can get some repetition with JT Daniels this season. I think Rice is going to be one of those teams where it's like I'm not expecting them to. I'm not saying that they are a lock to go 6-6 this season. I think they're going to be closer to around a 5-7. But I wouldn't be surprised if they shock some people. I really would not be surprised. I think that they could pull off some shocking wins. I mean, I would not be surprised if they beat UConn. They play SMU at home in November. I think it's on November 4th that this happens. That is a game that I think I may try to go into because SMU tends to choke at whenever things are at their best. I've seen this. I've seen this happen with them before. I think Rice is a team where it's like they're not going to be in the fighting. They're not going to be in the AC, but you're going to see some parts of them where you're like, they're building something, and I respect them on that front.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that they're, you have to start somewhere. They're definitely, kind of in the path in the right direction. So, so for 7 and 6, for 7 I have North Texas, and 6 I have East Carolina. You pretty much have the same two in reverse, so that we can kind of put these together. I mean, North Texas, Eric Morris comes in. He's kind of had a quick rise through the ranks. He was at Incarnate Word. He was really good there at Incarnate Word, and he became he went to Washington last season, I believe it was. Yeah, I think it was Washington last season. And now he gets the head coaching nod at North Texas. They've kind of shown flashes. They beat UTSA a couple of years ago. They were UTSA's lone loss in the regular season, and they went to the Conference USA championship game last season as well. So it's going to be they have a good foundation there. They have a good team. So it's gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see what happens. Their experience is there. Chandler Rogers comes in from ULM to start at quarterback. They lost Jair Shorter, which was probably their best playmaker. He transferred to Auburn. So they got some talent there to win. And with so that they're going to be there. I feel like they might be one of those sleeper teams to be in the conversation late in the year, and maybe with one or two losses later on in the season. But so we have to see about them. And with East Carolina at my 6, they're coming off their best season ever, 8-5 under Mike Houston. Contending. I don't know if they can contend for the AAC title or anything like that, but they bring back quarterback Holton. Is it Colton Ahlers? Comes back.
Ahlers, I don't know.
Ahlers,
I know that. Yeah. All I know is that he sucked against Houston last year. That's all I know.
Keaton Mitchell comes back at running back. Isaiah Winstead and CJ Johnson.
Allers went to the NFL draft and he got undrafted.
Yeah. So they're losing those guys. Sorry, they're not. That's right. I misread my notes. So they're losing Allers, they're losing Mitchell, and they're losing their top two receivers, Isaiah Winston and CJ Johnson. And 4 of the 5 offensive linemen are gone. So it's going to be Mason Garcia is going to be slotted to start in the quarterback position. So it's going to be interesting to see how. So I see East Carolina and North Texas right there. They kind of have potential, but I don't see them really being threats in the American.
Honestly, you kind of just nailed everything on the head. I think East Carolina for me is just somewhat of an enigma. We just don't know how they're going to build, but they're still building. Like you said, they went 8-5 last year. They went 4-4 in the conference. They opened the season at Michigan, so prayers up for East Carolina on that front. But I think you kind of nailed on the head. These are kind of the teams where it's like I can acknowledge, yeah, they're good and they're going to be good. Are they going to be New Year's Six bound good? I don't
Probably
think so
not.
just yet. But
Yeah.
you know what? This is but North Texas. Let's see what their offense looks like next season. Let's see what their offense looks like in 2024. I mean, because we've seen what that coaching staff did with Cam Ward when he was at Incarnate Word, and then worked with him again last year at Wazoo.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go into your. Is it your number 4 spot now?
So I'm at number five. My top five here, my top five is pretty much they're probably the most likely to contend for the title. For my number five is Memphis. I think they've had pretty good seasons the last few years. They've played in 3 consecutive bowl games under Ryan Silverfield. But they're they're it seems that they're a step behind, or there's something missing there. With the heavy hitting teams like Houston, Cincinnati, UCF leaving, and you're bringing in other teams that aren't as good as them into the mix, you might you might add some wins to Memphis schedule this season. So um, it's going to be interesting to see what Memphis does, which is why I have them at my number five. I don't think they're just quite there yet. But Seth Hennigan is back at quarterback. He threw for over 3,500 yards and 22 touchdowns last year. Blake Watson comes in from Old Dominion to kind of in the backfield to lead the running backs there. So I think that they might, if the pieces fall just right, Memphis should definitely be in a bowl game. They should be bowl eligible this year, and maybe try to threaten for 10 wins. So that's why they're my number five team.
So Memphis last season started off 4-1. They go up against Houston. I think it was a Thursday night game. I think it was a Thursday or Friday night game. I think it was Friday. I got so pissed off that I turned the game off. And I literally woke up the next morning and I saw that Houston came back and won 33-32. And then after that happened, Memphis would go on to lose 3 more games, making it 4 straight losses. They still make it to a bowl game just barely. Excuse me. They go into the bowl game at 6-6. Then they beat Utah State. This Memphis is still a team that we're trying to figure out. I mean, we are way far past the Paxton Lynch days of Memphis. Seth Hennigan, I've seen him make throws last year that it kind of made me like, this guy definitely knows how to play. I think Memphis is a team that if they actually would have been more consistent in the late 2010s, they could have been in a conversation of making it to that Big 12 team. Unfortunately, that they did not. Memphis still they're still going to be among the best recruiters in this conference. It's still a good football program. It's still a building program. I think they still have a lot to offer in the future. I think them at number 5 is a more than fair spot. And that's kind of where I got them at too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And for number 4, the reason why I have FAU at number 4, and I think you have FAU at number 4 as well. The reason why I have FAU at number 4, I feel like a lot of the times in college sports, you kind of get like this trickle down effect with success, or you kind of it's contagious. You saw what FAU's basketball team did; they had this miraculous run to the Final Four, and I feel like that can be contagious sometimes. I saw the same thing happen with UTSA and their baseball team. UTSA football started doing really well, and now their baseball team is one of the best. Arguably one of the best teams in the American and in Conference USA, and almost you can even say the country. They were threatening late last season, but anyway, that's not the point here. So FAU, I think that they kind of got that taste of success with the basketball team, with that miraculous run to the Final Four, and just barely they were a buzzer beater away from making the national championship game. That I feel like that can trickle down, that can carry over into the football program. You bring back Tom Herman comes in to coach that team, and he's had Power 5. He's been a Power 5 head coach. He's had success. And he's had success. He's led teams to the New Year's Six Bowl with Houston. So I think that might be a good thing for them, for FAU to kind of get that taste of success in that campus, and kind of let that lead that football team to kind of that next step. And I like I said, I don't think that they're going to threaten the top three. I think the top three are a little bit a step ahead, but they there could be threatening to but definitely be bowl eligible and maybe even compete to try to get 9 or 10 wins.
So I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of say that I'm just all in on Casey Thompson coming into FAU.
Yeah,
I think this is. I have a double-edged sword as to why I should wish nothing but terrible things on Tom Herman this season, with the way that he left Houston and the fact that he was an analyst for the Bears last season, as a Packers fan. But I'm not going to do that because I'm a nice guy and I have good Christian values, and I believe that I shall forgive Tom Herman, despite the fact that he's made very questionable choices. And I'm surprised that you did not talk about the other New Year's Six bowl game that he won, one that you were in attendance for. Would you care to explain on that?
no, I don't want to talk about that Texas victory over Georgia. I kind of admitted that uh, on purpose. No, I mean, but yeah, he's had success. I mean, he's taken teams to the next. He's kind of taken teams to that next step. I mean, Texas was kind of in the lull for a long time, and he was able to push that into that next step. He took Houston to a New York Six bowl. He took Texas to a New
And
York
I will
Six.
tell you something else too. When Houston went to that, not just the bowl game, but just being in that season, I was still in high school at that time. But when Houston started to ring in some wins that year, that was a situation of like, oh, Houston, and at the time it was just a school that was about 30 minutes away from me. I didn't even view it as a college yet, or a college that I'll have any affiliation with later, but it was kind of like, oh, they're actually good. They're getting good. We did not expect this.
Yeah,
They haven't been good like that in over 4 years. And Tom Herman, when he went to Texas, it was a grind at first, but he got them to a New Year's Six bowl, beat an SEC team in the Sugar Bowl. I promise you, I'm not trying to throw salt into wounds
that's the
here,
last time
but
Georgia's lost a postseason game too. So
the thing about this, though, to think about is that Tom Herman, it looks like that this is a type of situation where he would thrive in also. He was
yeah,
able to take Texas and Houston, those his previous two coaching jobs, and get them out of the woodwork relatively fast. He did that really well at Houston. And him to be back in a conference that he's very familiar with in the AAC with a quarterback that's been, for the most part, proven. I mean, I know he's going to have his doubters, but Casey Thompson's a great quarterback to work with, especially at this upper level G5
yeah,
stage.
good scenario for him. He's been a
This
bit.
is
I feel like Casey Thompson's been a victim of circumstance a lot the last, in his two stints with Texas. With Texas bringing in
He's
Cooney.
talented.
Yeah, but he has
He's
talent.
talented. Is he gonna be this guy that's gonna be in New York at the end of the year? Most likely not. But he's a guy that you can confidently put in your team and still, kind of like, still get you to pull through the regular season. He's that kind of guy. I trust this guy. That I don't know how many more quarterbacks in the AAC I trust more than Casey Thompson. We've really yet to name one in terms of our rankings.
Yeah,
I think FAU has stability. They have a coach that knows how to get a G5 school, an AAC school out of the woodwork, out of the dust. I think this is a perfect scenario for Tom Herman to thrive in his first season at FAU.
yeah, for sure. I agree with you 100%. I mean, they could potentially pull the Tulane type of season that kind of comes out of nowhere, while Cincinnati and USF kind of, were the favorites, were the two teams that were kind of battling for that spot. Tulane comes out of nowhere and puts themselves in that position. So I can definitely see, UAF doing that. So yeah, so we'll have to see. We'll have to see. We'll see what happens with. I'm sorry, not UAF, FAU. So yeah. And then for my number three, I still think the number three for
This is
me,
where it's going to get juicy, fellas.
it
Just to
gets kind
give,
of, yeah.
just
So I have SMU number three. Preston Stone is a rising star. I like him a lot. I think he's a very talented quarterback. They've added a lot. They did add a handful of impact additions in the transfer portal. They have the pieces in place to make the title game in 2023. Rashid Rice is gone. I mean, which is it's a hurt. That hurts losing that talent. But they bring in Jordan Hudson from TCU. They have 5 offensive linemen back. And a lot of them with Power 5 experience. Uh, um, they bring in a running back from Miami, Jalen Knighton, to kind of bolster that firepower. So they have the firepower to compete with UTSA and Tulane. I mean, spoiler alert, those are the top 2 teams, and that's not really a spoiler because that's everybody knows that.
Consensus.
Yeah, they have the firepower to compete with those teams. If either of those teams kind of have a lull defensively, they come into that game against TCU kind of soft on defense, they might make you pay for it. And by the time you realize what's happening, it might be too late. So, I don't know if they'll be good enough to come to get past UTSA and Tulane. But yeah, I think that's going to be. I think they're definitely going to be in the mix. So and like spoiling that, obviously the top 2 teams are Tulane and UTSA.
Well, hang on a second here. You just totally ignored me, man. Like, we're just not even acknowledge the fact that I put Tulane at number 3. What, Andrew? New Year's Six bowl team, New Year's Six winner last season against the Heisman winner, number 3. What? Are you serious?
I was trying to get past you. Yeah. So
yes, listen. This is just not. This is just not a shade. This is not a shot at Tulane. This is not a shot at Michael Pratt, who you can make the debate. Or honestly, I think it's pretty consensus that he is the best quarterback on this Tulane team. Of course, he's the best quarterback in the damn conference. That's what I'm trying to say. It's just that the fact that a lot of that Tulane offense last year relied on Tyjae Spears, and he's no longer there. He's now in the NFL. He's with the Titans, and it's just a situation. It's just a weird situation of you just don't see a piece like that leave a group of 5 team, and that group of 5 team just stays. I think Tulane still is very talented. I was blessed to see them in person last year, and my main takeaway from Tulane is that Willie Fritz, the 9th-year head coach at Tulane, is that he's going to get these guys to play hard, and this all starts in the trenches for Tulane. And whenever you lose a guy that is as patient of a runner as Tyjae Spears is, sometimes watching the way that he ran was poetry. For me, he was the best running back, most valuable running back in the country to his team. Whenever you lose a piece like that, it does get tougher, and it's kind of also questioning like, okay, who's going to be the next guy to step up? Is good, because Shea White's no longer there at Tulane. We're gonna have to look at Lawrence Keys III a little bit to, he's gonna have to step up from his 300 yards last year. There's just still some questions in the passing game. Michael Pratt fed off of Tyjae Spears. The fact that Tyjae Spears is no longer there, it's like this is going to be a bit of a newer offense for Tulane. That is my only budge against Tulane. I still think they're going to get at least 9 wins this season. But honestly, I think my top 2 teams, they're really talented. It's kind of hard to see them. And we've seen games like this. I mean, conferences like this where it's like, even last year, if you even, sometimes even a 10 win team can struggle to make it the conference final. That's what happened with the AC last year. It's still, these, once you start getting into these top 3 teams, this is where it gets complicated.
Yeah. And it's going to be, and I don't think it's that big of a hot take to have SMU at number 1. I mean, they definitely have the talent. For me, it's just, just to, I agree with what you said about Tulane, which is why I have them number 2. I think, Tyjae Spears is kind of is the biggest loss to them. Michael Pratt, he's still a very good quarterback, and he is back, but yeah, Tyjae Spears is really, really good, and I feel like he probably was a bigger reason why they won the Cotton Bowl last year and why they won the American last year is because of that. But I don't think that either of those teams have hold a candle to UTSA, and UTSA is so good. It is so good, and I also wrote the preview on UTSA in our magazine, and like, it's unprecedented how much stability this team has had over the last 3 or 4 years. In the age of college football, especially nowadays, when you have transfer portal and you have all these people leave was whenever they don't get playing time. And you didn't see that at UTSA. You finally, I mean, this is the first year with uh, Zachariah Franklin transferring to Ole Miss, but go get. I mean, he went to Ole Miss. He went to an SEC team with so. I have no. There's no. Definitely deserves that. He was the best receiver at UTSA last year. So, but aside from that, Frank Harris comes back for his seventh season, 7 years at UTSA. He's been at UTSA longer than some people play in the NFL. He's been at UTSA for 7 seasons. And he's back again, his final season of eligibility. He's probably the best quarterback in the American Conference. And outside of, even though Zachariah Franklin is gone, you have Josh Cephas and DeCorian Clark back. They're the two who were very, very, very good last year. And you can't ignore the fact they won 10 games in back-to-back seasons. They won 11-1. They went 11-1 2 years ago and won the Conference USA. Last year they were leading. They were pretty much in the game against Texas in the third quarter in Austin, and they had a triple overtime loss to Houston in the season opener that kind of
I was there for
them. Yeah, that we were there for. Yeah, we were there covering that game.
That's right. You and I were both there. Yeah, you left early.
That was pretty.
Yeah,
an incredible game leave. That was. And so
I almost got ran over by Clayton Tune that game. My God.
Yeah, but I just can't see. I see UTSA representing the Group of Five in the New Year's Six Bowl next year or this season. It's kind of like their lost hurrah, in my opinion. I think it's the team is going to definitely go through a rebuild following this season with the amount of talent that they're losing after this year. So I think they're going to try to go out with the bang. And Jeff Traylor is probably one of the best head coaches in the country, in my opinion. And it's incredible how he's remained loyal to UTSA with so many Power 5 teams coming after him. But the Roadrunners are going to be damn good. I mean, they're going to be damn good, and I think that they're probably going to be they're going to win the conference, and they're going to be representing the American in the New Year's Six Bowls.
So my thing was, I have SMU number 1, I have UTSA number 2. And the fact that these two teams don't play each other in the regular season is an atrocity. It's truly an atrocity. I don't know who did the AAC schedule. The fact that you don't have, in my opinion, a top 2 team in the AAC and SMU, that's just my personal opinion. I think they are a top 2 team in the AAC against who has essentially been cream of the crop of the Conference USA over the last 2 years and should essentially be the textbook of how to build a football program in the first 15 years. The fact that you guys don't have those two teams, how far of a drive is it from Dallas to San Antonio? Isn't it like 5 hours?
About 5 hours.
5 hours. That's a short bus ride for them. I mean, come on. How the hell do you not have this? And I don't care if it's at Gerald Ford. I don't care if it's at Alamo Dome. Like, this is a game that you just know if they would have scheduled it, this would have deserved, like, best G5 regular season game of the season. The fact that this is not a regular season game between the two, it disgusts me, especially as a Texan. Okay, it really does. I guess am I a Texan? I've been here 15 years. Yeah, I kind of am. But beside the point, though, of that, there's so much to like about SMU, in my opinion. I hate to say this as a Houston guy, but it's so true, though. I love Preston Stone. And one big thing, I think you and I got a bit of a special connection to Preston Stone. Remember when you and I used to go to those to the All-American game at the Alamo Dome for like those 2-3 years? Do you remember when he made his commitment to SMU in 2019, I think it was?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I do.
I didn't know who he was as a high school quarterback, but I remember I was watching him and I forgot who the teams were on like his table. I know that they said that he was a class of 2020 kid, but he was making his commitment like a year early. And this dude had Alabama on the table. He had SMU, and I think the third team was Texas. I could be wrong on that. It would make sense if it was Texas. And I was like, Dallas kid, Texas is a huge brand in Dallas. I think that's the brand that runs Dallas. He's gonna pick Texas, and if it's not Texas, it's gotta be Alabama. Ain't zero chance in hell that this kid's gonna commit to SMU. And when I saw and he committed to SMU, and not only did he commit to SMU, he's been on the bench the last 2 seasons to Tanner Mordecai. Tanner Mordecai has now gone to Wisconsin to be a grad transfer over there. And now for as successful as this SMU offense has been the last 2 years, this is an offense that had 84 points against Houston last season in November. And now, I know we bashed on Lashley on the show before, but the fact that he was able to get SMU as high scoring as they were, I mean, this is a team that averaged 317 passing yards per game. Preston Stone is a guy that has been in a cage the last 2 years, and he's finally being unleashed to the college football world this year. I am so excited to watch this kid. I think he has a chance to be a star this season. And if Quinn goes to, well, no, because Arch Manning is still there. But if things don't work out with Connor Wegman down at A&M, or let's just say TCU has a bad year, who's to say that Preston Stone might look at the mirror and be like, listen, I've spent the last 3 years here in Dallas with SMU. Why can't I go to a bigger program and chase after bigger things? I think Preston has the capabilities to be the best quarterback in this conference this season. And I'm really excited for what they got to do. And also, we got to talk about Jordan Curley. I mean, listen, Rashee Rice, massive loss. I mean, he was second in receiving yards last season, only to Tank Dell. Jordan Curley still had 600 yards last year, 588 actually. And I think he's another receiver that I think is going to break out for SMU this year. I think SMU, they don't even need to have a good defense. If they can just outscore all their opponents, I think they have a great shot to even make a New Year's Six Bowl this year. And UTSA, listen, Zachary Franklin was a big loss. It really was. But we've seen DeClorian Clark when he's healthy. I mean, he only played 9 of possible 14 games last year. And we've seen Joshua Cephas have big games also. There's been a game where Joshua Cephas has had big games better than Zachary. Those two teams are my top 2 in the AEC. I think those two are the best offenses in the G5. I think that's my matchup. And obviously we're about to go into our conference championship predictions. That's mine. And let me just read it. I think I'm going to go with UTSA beating SMU in the AAC title game, but I think it's going to be high scoring though when that day comes. I think that's going to be a game where I'm going to fly to Vegas and bet my entire 401k on the over.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see SMU being there. My championship prediction is UTSA over Tulane. I really do think it'll be interesting now with the conferenceless, divisionless conferences, I should say. Now in college football, you can see 2 teams playing each other in back-to-back weeks, and I definitely see that happening here. Tulane and UTSA I have my best team, my best in-conference game is going to be UTSA and Tulane in week 13, and then my championship prediction is UTSA and Tulane in the championship game the week later. So I could definitely see both teams being undefeated or maybe one-loss teams by the time. Oh, not undefeated, because UTSA plays Tennessee and Texas, I think. So yeah, never mind. They're not going to be undefeated when they get to the championship game. But I can see both teams being up there in record, and that last game of the season being a de facto conference championship game, maybe, and the winner has to play a team like SMU in the championship game. Or if both teams have enough wins or as maybe one or no losses by the time they get there, I could see them playing back-to-back weeks again with UTSA and Tulane in the championship game. So so I can definitely see both of those situations happening. But I think UTSA at Tulane in that last week of the year, the last game of the season, is going to be a hell of a game. I think it's going to be the litmus test for both teams to see exactly where they're at, and that might be the one to take them to the championship game and to the New Year's Six. So that's my conference game and my championship prediction. And UTSA wins.
Yeah. So I had to do a double take on SMU's schedule right now. I want every AAC schedule maker fired. Because the reason why this UTSA at Tulane game at week 13, that's also my best conference game of the year. The reason why this is my top game of the season in the AAC is because SMU doesn't play either of these teams in the
Yeah.
regular season team. They don't play, we just said UTSA, they don't play Tulane either. What the hell? I mean, okay, I don't know where to
Yeah.
go from that thought, but
Yeah.
that's
No,
kind of a
but
little bit
that's
what
going
I'm
to
saying.
benefit SMU though. That'll benefit SMU by having to
Easier
avoid playing
schedule.
those teams. Exactly. That'll allow them to you know, have that one less loss or two less losses on their resume when they get to the end of the season. So I can definitely see that. I agree with you for sure.
So let's go a little bit on the top of the non-conference game. Um, you know, I was originally going to go with your pick because it did, it did mention a school that I'm obviously very familiar with, but I wasn't going to go there. So instead, I went with Ole Miss at Tulane week 2. I think very early in the season, we're going to get a gist of who Tulane really is, and what better way than to go against Lane Kiffin and we'll just say a stout SEC team. SEC team. Ole Miss has kind of been they kind of been a little bit on the up and down over the last 2 seasons. Last year they had a hot start, and then they absolutely crashed towards the end of the season, and they lost to Texas Tech in the Texas Bowl here in Houston. I want to know how this is going to be a really telling test of like where Tulane is exactly in terms of as a program and how they're going to grow the rest of the season. Ole Miss going to New Orleans is kind of is kind of a weird game.
Yeah, you don't
I
see
would have
that
thought,
very often.
yeah, no, you don't. Um, to be fair, though, I mean, Tulane has a SEC championship more recent than Ole Miss's rivals, Mississippi State. Fun fact: there's your piece of knowledge for the day. But yeah, I think it's gonna be really interesting. We're gonna see Tulane. This will be very telling of where we are in our predictions too, in terms of how much do we truly value what Tulane is bringing to the table in 2023. Can they handle an SEC team in the trenches? That's kind of my take on that.
Yeah, yeah. No, my top non-conference game is Houston at UTSA. I think the not
UTSA
only are
Houston,
the
you mean?
both teams UTSA at Houston, yeah. Not only do both well, it's kind of like a new era for both teams. Houston making their Big 12 debut, UTSA making their AAC debut, and you saw the game that happened last year was an amazing game. Incredible game for either team could have won that game. UTSA was winning early, and that great comeback by Houston. And it was just it's an amazing game. It's almost it can almost become a rivalry, with Houston and San Antonio being pretty close together. And that kind of after that UTSA plays Texas. The other non-conference games are Texas and Tennessee. So I don't really see either of those teams being any sort of upset alert for UTSA, unfortunately, because both Texas and Tennessee are going to be very good. But I think starting your season against a Big 12 opponent, a team that you're very familiar with, a team that you've beaten before, at Houston. And I think they've already made shirts. I think it was a TD UTSA Stadium. They're starting to call it. So yeah. So that I feel like that's my best non-conference game. So and that's going to be a great game. Lastly here, we're wrapping this up here a little bit. So let's go. Let's kind of a rapid fire our key players who we think. So who are your two key guys for the year, and then your breakout players?
Key players JT Daniels to Rice. I think this is a very telling transfer for Rice. JT Daniels, whether we can make the jokes that he's only healthy for 4 games of the season, whatever it may be, he's the starter, then he loses the job, as we've seen at Georgia. But I think he's still a big name. He's still a big name for Rice to get in. This kind of leaves me a little bit curious of like what pull does Rice really have as a program to get a name like that out of the transfer market. And you know what? To get a guy like that, we keep talking about like how can Rice progress? Getting a guy like that who we know is a starter in this game, can always take the next step. Preston Stone, I feel like I just put this dude in a shrine at my local Catholic church. The way that I just spoke about him, I mean, I think he's going to have a great season this season. One of the best, I think he's one of the most best kept, worst kept secrets in college football in terms of what he can do. My breakout stars, DeCorian Clark for UTSA. I know that's a little boring. I know people know DeCorian Clark, but this dude still only played 9 games of a possible 14 last season. He was still third in on UTSA's receiving ranks. So he was under 800. I still think Frank Harris can take any offense and add 5 points to their averages. Well, maybe not all of them, but you kind of get what I'm saying here. I think Zachariah Clark is going to have a much bigger season, especially with Zachary Franklin going to Ole Miss. And then I already said him earlier, Jordan Curley. I think he's going to build on from that sub 600-yard season last year with no Rashee Rice. I think he's going to have a fantastic chemistry with Preston Stone going into 2023 season.
Yeah, those are definitely great names. I went a little bit more of, I guess, boring. I went a little chalk here. My top two key players are Frank Harris and Michael Pratt, quarterbacks for UTSA and Tulane, respectively. I think that they're the two best quarterbacks in the conference. I think they're the two biggest difference makers in the conference. I think those teams that the American will shake up, will be determined in how those two guys play. In my opinion. If those guys do what they need to do and they show the talent that they're capable of showing, it's going to be you're going to see Tulane and UTC at the top of the conference. If not, then you might see guys like SMU and FAU up there to kind of compete with that. My breakout players or my sleeper players are Casey Thompson with FAU. Like I mentioned, I think that's a perfect fit for him, and Tom Herman kind of getting a fresh start for both of them. They've kind of seen their times in other programs kind of be taken over by other people. So I think that it's a good matchup for them, a good parent for them, and they could definitely make some noise there. And then Shady Clayton Johnson, the running back for Tulane, with Tyree Sharp leaving, Tajay Sharp leaving to the NFL, who's going to step in that role? I think their offensive line is still very good, and if he can kind of, he doesn't have to be sharp, but if he can kind of be a little semblance of what they saw last year, the production they saw last year, that could also propel Tulane to take that next step. So those are my breakout players and my key players. And then lastly, our offensive player, defensive player, and coach of the year. For me, again, I went a little chalk here. My coach of the year, I went with Tom Herman. The more I'm reading about FAU, the more I fall in love with the program, and I feel like they're going to be very successful this year. Offensive player of the year, Frank Harris. I mean, he's the best quarterback in the conference, and it's not even close. He could be a best player in the country. I think he's a sleeper. He's a backdoor pick for being in New York as a Heisman finalist. And he has all the talent in the world around him to put up amazing numbers. So I think he's my offensive player of the year. And for defensive player of the year, Darius Hodges for the edge rusher for Tulane. He's back again. He had a very productive season last year with 37 tackles, 5 sacks last year. He kind of took a leap forward after 2021. He's arguably their best defensive player. So I'm interested to see him, and I think if Tulane does what they are capable of doing, and they're in the conversation for a New Year's Six Bowl, I think a player from that team will get the consideration for defensive player of the year. So what about you?
I said Preston Stone. I'm not even going to bother. I mean, I say what I say. What do you want to do? Just grab an audio recorder and just repeat it. I mean, I could honestly talk about this guy all day. Trey Moore from linebacker for UTSA. UTSA's kind of always been they've kind of been a bit of a greedy team in the conference USA the last 2 years. You already know what you're going to get from them in the front seven. They're very aggressive in the front seven. I think that's kind of where he shines a little bit. I think he's going to get the biggest benefit of that for UTSA this season. And should we go ahead and just close this out with our coach of the years?
Yeah. Like I mentioned, I think I have Tom Herman as my coach of the year.
That's right.
Like I'm really falling in love with this FAU team. The more I listen to him, so I'm excited to see what he's going to do.
I said Rhett Lashlee, SMU. Again, I could keep kissing SMU's backside. I'm tired of doing it. I really am. But at the same time, we've already spoke about it. SMU has a much better schedule than what a lot of these AAC teams have. They don't have to play too late. That's an atrocity. The fact that that's true. I think that SMU in general is going to benefit from that very much. I think they're going to have among the highest powered offenses, and media is going to absolutely throw all the roses at Rhett Lashlee for being able to turn this team into a high powered offense. And also for the sake of that, they're not going to have their bogey teams such as UCF and Cincinnati, and that they don't play Tulane. you're just asking SMU to have success this season. I truly think that they're that good. I think they're going to be very good in the AAC. And that's kind of it. I mean, I just think that SMU has all the pieces. They've been given all the resources. They just got to go out there and just win their conference.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree with you. It's going to be interesting. I think the American is one of the most intriguing conferences in the country. They have a lot of talented teams, a lot of kind of sleeper teams that could make some noise. A lot of new head coaches, a lot of new quarterbacks, but then you have a lot of the same with UTSA and Tulane and that at the top of it's a very top heavy conference for sure. But yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. So thank you guys again. We're wrapping up. We're rapidly approaching the college football season. We're only a couple weeks away, and every single day that gets closer is just like another. It's like waiting for Christmas morning. You just get even more excited. So we're definitely excited for it. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. Continue supporting Transfer Portal CFB at tportalcfb on Twitter, and make sure to purchase our digital magazine. Our links in all of our bios and all of our social media platforms. And we'll look forward to this American Conference season coming up. Andrew, thank you so much. Welcome back. Glad to have you back on the team. Have you around, and yeah, have a good one.
Deuces.